Are you frustrated trying to find your ancestor in that 1790 census? Not really sure how to get the most out of it for your research? Well, you're in the right place, because today we are going to take a close-up look of that 1790 census. Hey there, everyone. I am Lisa with Are You My Cousin? And this YouTube channel is designed to help you find your ancestor, grow that family tree, but not be overwhelmed in the process. So if that sounds like your cup of tea, you are in the right place. Now, when I first started researching, one of my favorite ancestors is by the name of James Harwood. Now, I know we're not supposed to have favorite ancestors, but, well, James Harwood is my favorite ancestor. And it's probably because I cut my genealogy teeth researching him. And I was able to find so much about that Howard family line until I hit James Harwood and I hit 1790. Ouch. That 1790 census was a bit confusing to me. Well, I'm going to be honest. Anything pre-1840, 1850 census record at that early research stage was hard for me. But that's okay. I dug in and I learned how to use those tick marks. I used how to use those columns and numbers to build out households for my ancestors and get the most out of those census records so that I could continue to build my family tree back further. Now, if that 1790 census has challenged you in your own genealogy research, go ahead and hit that like button and let me know. Mostly, it lets me know that I'm not the only one who has struggled in trying to learn more about that 1790 census and what it was really telling me about my ancestor. Now, let's get a little bit of history first about that 1790 census and actually why it was taken to begin with. Now, after the Revolutionary War and prior to that first 1790 census, there really was not an accurate count of the population here in this young country of America. And in order to really determine kind of what the tax burden would be for each state in the United States, then they needed to have an accurate count of the population and where those clusters of higher populations were as opposed to states with lower populations. Marshals were appointed to go to each district and to collect the information on the residents in that particular area. Now, we have to remember that at that time, the United States was a young country, and there's some unique things to consider when you're looking at that 1790 census if you're struggling to find your ancestor just a bit. Now, the states that would have been included in taking of that 1790 census at the time would have been Connecticut, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, New York, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, South Carolina, and Vermont. But I know what you're thinking. Vermont wasn't a state until 1791, right? Well, you're absolutely correct. So a special statute was actually created so that the Vermont census was actually taken in 1791. Another unique fact that most people might not recognize is that for people who were living in what would become the District of Columbia, they were actually in that 1790 census included in the counties of Prince George and Montgomery counties over in Maryland. Now, unfortunately, not all of the schedules for the 1790 census actually survived. And that's unfortunate for us as genealogy researchers. But it's important because we want to make sure that if we are looking for our ancestor in a census record, we want to make sure we're not wasting time searching for them in a record that did not survive. There are other avenues of research that we could be pursuing, so we want to make sure we're not wasting time researching for something that doesn't actually exist. So some of the census schedules that were lost included Delaware, Georgia, Kentucky, New Jersey, Tennessee, and some in Virginia as well. Now, one of the first things that you may notice when you get into that 1790 census is the headings. They're usually handwritten. They can be difficult to read, but you can overcome that. I recommend that before you ever start looking at your ancestor in that record, you get a copy of a blank 1790 census form. Now, these are available for free on the NARA site, the National Archives site. They are available for free also at Ancestry.com. Get a set of blank census records so that you can have literally for each year, for each census that was taken, a clear copy of what the headings were. This will facilitate your research as you go through. You're not having to go back and forth trying to decipher what those handwritten column headings said. You've got it right there. You'll be much more efficient with your research. Now, those 1790 census headings, they went as such. There was the head of the household. That's where you're going to see the name. And then you start to get the numbers and the age categories. You have the head of the household, free white males over the age of 16, free white males under the age of 16, free white females, no age separation there, just free white females, all other free persons in the household, and enslaved individuals. And then the far column will usually be the number of people, the total number of people in that household. Now I'm going to turn the camera around. I want you to peek over my shoulder as I explore the 1790 census for my ancestor, James Harwood, and give you some tips that you can use in your research as well. Okay, so we are over here looking at the 1790 census for my ancestor, James Harwood. And I wanted to bring you over here so you could sort of, in essence, peek over my shoulder and look at how I analyze this particular census record for him. So the first thing, obviously, I'm doing, I like to just keep it zoomed out. I want to take a quick peek at it and just really see what are my first impressions when I look at this particular census record. Okay, now just again to give you a point of reference, this is 1790. This is Wake County, North Carolina. So I'm going to just take a quick peek, and one of the first things I notice, and I'm going to enlarge it for you, is the fact that I'm seeing alphabetized names. And unfortunately, what I'm seeing is the fact that they are alphabetized by first letter. First name, the first letter of the first name. So that's an interesting thing. Oftentimes, if I'm seeing an alphabetized list, it's usually going to be by surname, although this is certainly not the first instance that I've seen of the first names. It just makes it a little more problematic if you're unsure of what your ancestor's first name is, but that's okay. We're going to work through that as well. So first thing I'm going to do, again, this is for my ancestor, James Harwood. The surname Harwood was very fluid as far as spelling was concerned. And so we actually find him over here on the second column here, and we find him right here, James Harwood, Harrod. Now this is an accepted spelling, although typically the name would have been Harward, is probably one of the most predominant ways I see it spelled, and it eventually morphed into Howard. So it's all over the place. But we're genealogy researchers. We know that name spelling is fluid, and so we just go with it, right? All right. First things first. So I've kind of gotten an idea. Because it's alphabetized by first name, obviously I needed to know James's first name. But additionally, the thing it tells me is that I'm looking at a list of people who lived in close proximity together, or relative close proximity, but I do not know, I cannot make any conclusions about who lived closest. So who were James's closest neighbors? I have no idea looking at this list, unfortunately. That's one of the reasons I love to read through census lists that are not alphabetized, because you get a sense of who lived close to each other. And that can be important in helping you determine who maybe close or distant relatives could be. But if that's not the case here, that's okay. It's just something to keep in the back of my mind. So I've got this. The next thing I'm going to do is go over here, and I'm looking at his household, guys. I do recommend that you keep a blank census form with the 1790 headings close by. You can get those free at Ancestry. You can get those free at the National Archives, the NARA site as well. And having headings beside you helps you not have to keep scrolling up and down, back and forth to find, okay, wait a minute, what is this heading was? Which heading was this? How do I keep up with this? And getting lost in all the columns. So in this case, what we've got is this first column, which is free white males over the age of 16. We have one, that would be James himself. We have two free white males under the age of 16. Those are likely his two eldest sons. We have two free white females in general. So one of these is likely his wife, one likely a daughter. We have no other free persons in the household, and he has no enslaved individuals enumerated as part of his household. This is a household of 5, and so I'm going to make note of that. All right, great. I've established James where he was. I've established his household. And again, I can't say for sure that, the two white males under 16 are his sons. I'm making that assumption. I would need further research into those to be absolutely 100% sure, although I can be pretty darn sure just looking at the household here as it is. Now, I want to see, are there other Harwood family members in this area at this time period as well? So what that means is I need to read through these pages. So I'm going to start, obviously, on this particular page. I'm going to read up the line here where he is at. Do I see any more Harwoods? I don't see any more up there. If I scroll down, again, there's James Harwood. We have John Harwood. Okay, so there's his brother is close by. We have a Martin Harwood down here. So this is actually 3, and I actually do know that these three men are brothers, but if I didn't, I definitely am going to make note of them. I'm going to assess their households and keep that in my notes so that as I go forward and need to create research plans about them, I can do that as well. I would go up and down. Now, a little bit about this, guys. The page that my ancestors on, but I'm also going to typically, as a rule for myself, I go forward 5 pages and I read back 5 pages. So essentially I read 10 census pages for pretty much all of my census research because I want to see who else is around there, who else could potentially play a part in my research. If nothing else, I get a really good sense of what that neighborhood, what that district, what that county might have looked like at a point in time, that then if I go forward in my research, I realize sometimes I need to go back because perhaps I've seen names that all of a sudden I'm realizing I saw those, they were in that census record, and oh look, they're appearing in this particular deed or as witnesses. So that's what I'm looking for when I'm going back and forth. In this particular one, what I can tell you is as I go through this, so I found James, I got his household, I found the other Harwoods. We'll pretend I've already gone forward and backwards. But looking here, I'm looking to see, are there other names that basically ring a bell in my head? Is there anything else that jumps out at me? So as I look down here and I'm looking through these surnames here, I'm going through, there's James again. Well, James Herndon, this Herndon right under him. This Herndon name shows up in some of the Harwood family records, such as the deeds and the wills. I do see that as well. Another one that absolutely jumps out at me is this Joseph Barbie. So the Harwoods and Barbies intermarried a lot. James's wife was Rosanna Barbie. Joseph was her brother. So great. Anything there's a Barbie, I'm probably going to go ahead and make note of and see, because there was so much intermarriage between the family. I see James appearing in Joseph Barbie's records. I see Joseph Barbie appearing in James's records. So this is important to keep going here. Harwood, the Motley name, I see in the community. I don't necessarily see it show up in my ancestors' records. Coming over to the other side, if I go back up, Herndon, so we have a lot of Herndons. We have another Barbie here that would probably is somebody I need to look at. Daniel Hobson, I actually see this man mentioned in records for my ancestors, the Harwood ancestors. So these are the things that I'm pulling out. Do I actively research Daniel Hobson right now? Probably not, but I'm going to make a note of it so that I know where I can find him and come back to him if I need to build that tree out a little bit more. So that is how I look at this 1790 census record here. I'm going to confirm anything else I might need. On James, I would look for deeds. I might look for family Bible record, which I actually do have. I would look for other records to maybe support who might be in that household. Making note, again, just making note who is close by, who I would potentially might want to research out a little bit more. So that is how I use that 1790 census, get through all those columns of numbers, all those names, whether alphabetized or not alphabetized, and then I'm ready to move on with the next phase of my research plan. Welcome back, and I hope you enjoyed that and found that helpful to your own research. And I hope that you were able to pick up some clues, not only in how to find your ancestor in that census record, but also how to evaluate that census record at its fullest and be able to start adding new clues, new avenues of research to your own genealogy research plan. Now, if you would like to learn more about using census records, if you would like to learn more about creating genealogy research plans for your own research, watch the next video on your screen now.